So spring 2023 is upon us, and I just got finished getting my boat prepped to get on the water. Actually, Chatfield will be opening this Saturday. And so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of organizing some of my tackle. And while I'm going through it, I thought, what a good opportunity to show you what do I prepare in my boat for spring walleye fishing here on the Front Range. These baits and tactics don't change much in terms of what walleye like in the springtime. So don't discount that this couldn't work in your home body of water, because this is definitely stuff that walleyes have keyed in on for years, especially in the spring. I'm gonna break down this segment into day and night fishing for walleye. I think in the spring, more than any other time, day and night fishing have the most differences between how you'll catch fish. And so I wanted to kind of explain a little bit about what my thought process is when it comes to spring day fishing and spring night fishing. So let's just quickly talk about what could potentially work for a day fishing scenario at your home body of water. So you'll notice on my boat right now, I have all of my rod holders set up and ready to go. That's because primarily when I'm looking for fish in the spring, I'm doing it by trolling. So I have a bunch of trolling set up for spring walleye. And so my two primary baits that I'm gonna go to for daytime spring fishing are going to be any sort of like paddle tail grub. I use a whole plethora of them, right? These are bio bait grubs. These ones have just got like a paddle tail on the back and a jig head. You could use small stuff like these from Berkeley. I also have these kind of like tickle tail looking style with a bunch of ribs on them. I have every color you could think of. These ones are fairly new. I think these ones might be made by Salmo. And I have every color you could think of: purple and green and pink and white. I have natural colors. I'm not kidding when I say I have boxes and boxes of these baits. Here's another one where I've got all walleye assassins. You name it, color, style, size, brand, doesn't matter. I got all that you can imagine in different sizes and colors of these paddle tail baits. And the reason why that's important is because normally fish are going to key in on a specific bait. So last year, I had a ton of luck on this bait right here, and I'll show you. It is a purple back, almost a white belly, but it's got a little bit of like green flake in it. I'll try to get you an up close shot so you can see it. This bait produced more fish than any other bait that I used. So last year, that one was hot. A couple years prior, they wanted something with more of like a reddish purple, maybe more like a pink and a white belly, a true white instead of clear. Also, a lot of fish a couple years back were caught on this one with green and orange. So they're keying in on what they want. It could be the size of the bait fish that they're keying in on. It could be just a particular color that they like. But once you find that, then you can also go to different styles of baits and see how they swim to determine what not only color, but style of plastic that they're keying in on. So I have boxes and boxes of these baits. Here's some tickle tails that have been really popular by Kalen's. Got a lot of people in the Midwest fishing those tickle tails. I've always been a big fan of these Moxie Authentic X's. I've had pretty good success on those. I think they swim more freely than most paddle tail swim baits. But point being, if you're going out walleye fishing and you don't have a paddle tail swim bait, make sure you get a good assortment of colors. I would say if you're just starting out, maybe get a couple really bright colors, like these orange and greens, and then get a couple colors that are pretty subtle, like something that's more natural, like a green pumpkin or an olive. That way you have something for really cloudy weather or dark stained water, something bright, and then something more natural for clear water or maybe a brighter day. So that's kind of what my take would be on getting paddle tail swim baits. Most of these I'm trolling behind the boat in 20, 30 feet of water with a jig head on the end. So this is a 1/4 ounce jig head. You can use 1/8 ounce jig heads. Basically what you want to do is you want to get this bait as close to bottom as possible without actually digging into the sand. or the mud or the rock or whatever you got. You want it to be just above, just hovering kind of in that walleye zone. So use whatever jig head you'd like to get it down there, but I usually pull these behind lead core so I can drop them really, really fast. And I just pull them, you know, behind the boat. I don't know, I would say during spring it kind of varies, but you could travel anywhere between like 1.4 to 2 miles an hour almost. But these are an absolute must when it comes to daytime trolling for walleyes. Now the benefit is when you have these, you can also use them for casting from shore. So you're on shore, you got a couple jig heads in your pocket or in your bag, you hook on different colors and you cast them out there. Walleyes will absolutely eat these in the springtime, just casting from shore as well. So it's kind of a dual purpose bait if you're a boat fisherman or you are a shore fisherman. So make sure you definitely pick up some paddle tail swim baits. All right, so it goes without saying, if you're going to have paddle tail swim baits, you've got to have a good assortment of jigs. I have one box dedicated to jigs. Most of these jigs are just ones that I've acquired over the time. You can get really fancy, like the new pendulum jigs. I think they're called Penda jigs. You can get really basic. These are maybe like a 10-cent jig head that I got out of Walmart maybe years ago. You don't need anything crazy in order to catch these fish, but having a good assortment of jig heads is always good. The ones that have been popular lately have been even these like crater jigs, the ones that kind of float down a little bit softer because they have a little cup on the bottom that catches the water. You also have jigs that have got like any sort of like hair or bucktail on them, or just something that gives them a little bit more presence in the water. This would be something I would consider really, really big, but they also sell fairly small skirts as well. And there was a time where I actually used skirts on baits that didn't have them, and I would just buy the skirt separately and slide them on. Point being is just get yourself an assortment of jig heads. This may be something a little bit bigger that I might use for trolling, where the smaller ones are maybe a little bit better when you're in a rocky situation and you're really, you know, not casting super far, but you want to keep them out of the rocks, or you don't mind losing a few of those. So whether they've got spinners on them or not, whatever colors you can find, again, I would do the same pattern. I would do, you know, maybe a lot of whites, and then maybe find some natural, and then do a lot of like colored assortment jigs as well. But that's an absolute essential, especially if you're going to be using the paddle tail jigs. All right, so continuing on with our daytime bite, we're talking about crankbaits, flicker shad, salmo hornets. There's a number of them that are generically named as well, but most people are, you know, fishing brand name flicker shads or salmos, or, you know, maybe you're fishing a Cabela's or a Bass Pro version. All of them are totally fine. What you are looking for is something that has a really tight rattle and roll pattern. So what I mean by that is you want something that's got a quick wobble side to side, and that is what you get out of a flicker shad or a salmo hornet, as opposed to a stick bait where it has a long waggle. So this is like a quick rattle or a flutter, and a stick bait's got a longer tail wag. So these are all good options. These are just some like perch colors. I've had a lot of success, as you can tell, on this like green lantern color. So I have a lot of those in my box. Pinks and purples and grays and you name it. You can basically get away with it with a flicker shad or a salmo hornet. These are fished in the exact same way that you'd be fishing those paddle tail swim baits. Here's an example of some salmo hornets that we've got. Just a little bit smaller, quick walking profile bait. And these ones are actually, you know, I would say about half the size of what a flicker shad is. But either way, these will all catch fish. I've had a lot of success on all of them. But these are my springtime baits. Behind a lead core lead, trying to get them right off a bottom and just cruising them past those walleyes, and they'll come and pick them up. Usually when I'm on my boat, I'll have my back rods maybe fishing the paddle tail swim baits, and my front rods are fishing salmos or flicker shad. And once I dial in what they're eating, everything switches to either a paddle tail or a salmo or a color. Maybe it's, you know, they like both swim baits. and the Salmo Hornets, but they're all just like in the purple. So you could tie on anything purple and it might just dominate. So I would say number 2 for a spring fishing lure, make sure you definitely have some sort of crankbait. Flicker shads are a great go-to. Salmo Hornets are a great go-to. Here in my area, you're looking at like 5s to 7s for flicker shad, and for hornets, usually 4s, 5s, something like that. So definitely pick yourself up some of these. For lead core trolling, you can also cast these, but these are a lot better for trolling because you can get them down with lead core. So that kind of wraps up a little bit of the more moving style baits that we have for spring walleye. So let's check out the other daytime option you have for walleye. Okay, so there's one box I consistently bring with me everywhere I fish. It's not anything that I would leave at home in any scenario. I think these can work well throughout the year, but the springtime they get a lot more attention, and that is, call it cheating or not, slip bobber rigs. So a slip bobber rig, if you don't know what they are, essentially you have a line that goes through this bobber, and that goes down to a weight and a hook. And you usually are hooking on a leech or a minnow, fathead, whatever you got. You're just gonna hook it on down to the bottom. You're gonna cast it out. You're gonna try to get like a decent depth on it so that that bait is just hanging right off the bottom, and those walleyes are gonna come and pick it up. Slip bobbering can be done in the wind. Slip bobbering can be done from the shore. It can be done from the boat, just right off the side of the boat. A lot of people will do it in trees or thick cover. Slip bobbering works literally everywhere, and it catches a ton of fish, especially finicky fish when they're not really honed into movement. This can be the most natural and deadly way to catch fish. So without having to say a whole lot about how to slip bobber, make sure you have a slip bobber box. So slip bobbers are essential. Bobber stops, that will stop your bobber from going down too far because you want to be able to set the depth on your rig. And then make sure you have some weights, some swivels, some hooks. And then the other thing that you're definitely going to want is a depth finder. These just clip onto the hook and they're just weighted, and you drop them down to the bottom of the lake, and what happens is it will help you figure out exactly how deep your line is, and then you can move your bobber stop into position, reel this back up, take it off, and now when you drop down your line again, it's exactly right off bottom. So make sure you get these. Nothing can replace these, not even your sonar. This will tell you what true bottom is, so definitely get a couple of those. But slip bobbering is the last technique, I will say, that is very deadly for walleye fishing in the spring during the day. So now that we've kind of covered some of those basics, let's switch over to the nighttime stuff and talk a little bit about what we use at night. Okay, so nighttime is my favorite time to fish for big walleyes in the spring. They usually are breeding up on rocky areas, riprap, maybe where there's good transition from like sand to riprap. And they do also breed on sand banks. But I would say more often than not, walleye anglers will relate fish to a dam structure or rock face. And a lot of times at night, you can actually flip your headlamp on and shine it up on the surface, and you'll see a whole bunch of what you think are like little fireflies. And that's actually the walleye's eyes reflecting at you like a cat. So we want to make sure that we can target those species that is in that really shallow water. We want something that's got a decently long profile that also is going to stay up high in the water column. So that's where a floating stick bait really shines. So this right here is a Smithwick Rogue, but they make a whole bunch of different brands of floating and suspending stick baits. And basically it's got a longer profile. When you are reeling this in, it has a wider wag of the tail, and it's something that can very easily be silhouetted above the walleye with the surface of the moon. Bright conditions obviously, typically produce better results. However, walleye can eat at any time of night in any kind of darkness. Their eyes are built for it. They're a max predator, and they will absolutely gorge on these things. So I have every shape, style, and color of stick bait imaginable. I have multiple boxes of stick baits. These happen to all be Smithwicks. So Smithwick is very popular. They have the Rogue, they have the Super Rogue. I also have Rapalis. These ones are scatter minnows, which are great. There's a lot of YouTubers that are using scatter minnows, especially up in like the Wisconsin, Detroit River, all of that stuff. Those work phenomenal here in Colorado as well too. And then one of my more favorite baits is, you know, kind of an imitation of the Vision 110, which is a pretty expensive bass bait. But like the Cabela's Mean Eye Jerk stick. You've also got the Rick Clunn jerk stick. These are a little bit more of a jerk bait, a little less of a stick bait. They have a little bit more movement in them, but these are one of my favorite casting lures at night. But at night, the name of the game is catching walleyes in their hunt, their predatory mode. That's when they are really actively feeding, especially post-spawn, because they're catching up from all of their lack of eating during the spawn. Or you could also get them pre-spawn, but by the time boating usually opens up or the ice cap is usually off, a lot of those fish are starting to get into that spawn mode. I would say this year we might be opening a little bit early, so we might still have a lot of pre-spawn fish, but we'll just have to go out and check it out and see. But jerk baits are great for casting at night, as well as trolling behind the boat on planer boards. And so what I have set up on my boat right now, again with all of my rod holders, is this green light. And this green light will shine at my planer boards and show me exactly where they are out in relation to my boat at night, so I can easily see them. It gives me a good indicator of when I'm getting bit. I don't use the tattle flags on my rigs. I only use the flags for like a little bit of height on my board, but they actually do not move back when they get bit. They're stationary to the board. So this just helps me see those a little bit better and tell when I'm getting bit. So a lot of times at night, we'll run planer boards and stick baits and jerk baits. And then during the day, we're usually running more lead core, jigs, getting stuff to the bottom, looking for those fish down low. And then in the nighttime, when they start to move up, then we start catching them in the shallows. So that's kind of a little bit about how I've set up my boat for spring walleye fishing. I usually bring mostly lead core and mostly monofilament trolling rods. And then besides that, I will bring 1 or 2 maybe casting rods. And that's just, you know, maybe I can't get to a certain spot where I feel like the fish are with trolling, or it's too crowded and I kind of want to just pick apart different shorelines. But the name of the game is finding structure. Specifically, rocky structure can be great. But finding structure where you can target these walleyes and pick them off one by one. If that's not working and they're more spread out, then you can go and work a large area by trolling. But finding those fish, using your side imaging, using your down imaging, identifying where they're at. If they're very spread out in a basin, we're gonna troll for those fish. If they're really concentrated on the edge of a point and we see that on a sonar, then we're gonna just probably park the boat and start casting to those. But I would say those are kind of your primary uses for these baits in the springtime. There's others you can use, certainly. Blade baits, jigging wraps, you name it. There's a number of baits that you can use for walleye in the spring. But hands down, year after year, this is 100% always in my boat. So get yourself some paddle tails or some crankbaits for pulling behind lead core for daytime bite walleyes. And then get yourself some stick baits or jerk baits and use those primarily for your nighttime walleye fishing. And I think you'll have a ton of success this year if you give it a try. If you have any questions, put them down below. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you on the water this year. Good luck out there, and go get them this spring. Thanks for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in more relatable content, you can check out these videos right here. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe down below so you can stay updated on our next adventures.